Welcome to the Talking News on Saturday, the 8th of January 2022. This is Lisa, CEO of Sight for Wight, wishing you a very happy new year and hoping that everybody has an enjoyable time with family and friends over the Christmas and New Year period. Millbrook House opened to staff again this week. However, the trustees took the decision to delay the opening of Millbrook House to members. The number of cases of COVID on the island is increasing every day, and we must put our members and volunteers' safety first. So to this end, we've delayed the opening of Millbrook House to members, and we're hoping to reopen it very soon. One of the reasons behind this is it is a requirement that windows remain open during any indoor meeting that lasts for more than 15 minutes. And with such a cold start to 2022, we took the decision that people would not be comfortable sitting with the windows and doors open in Millbrook House to circulate the air when the temperature outside was indeed around zero. However, that said, please don't ever forget that our befriending scheme is up and running. So if you do just fancy a chat, don't hesitate to give us a call and we'll match you up with somebody, perhaps a member in the same situation as you, or a volunteer or a member of staff, and we can just sit and have a chat. Talking is so important and everybody enjoys a cup of tea and a chat. I very much look forward to being able to welcome people back into Millbrook soon, but in the meantime, Happy New Year and stay safe.
Hello everyone, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined 5 Important Steps You Can Take to Support the High Demand on Isle of Wight Hospital Services. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust is currently facing increased demand for its services, and it's calling on residents to do their bit by following 5 important steps. The continuing threat posed by COVID-19 and the usual winter pressures, including staff sickness, means that it's important that local people are using the right services for healthcare support so that frontline staff can focus on those most in need. If it's not an emergency, people can visit NHS 111 online or call NHS 111 in the first instance, where they will have access to a range of local healthcare services. This includes appointments with the Urgent Treatment Centre, GP out-of-hours service, or a telephone call with a healthcare specialist to allow people to receive care and advice at home. 5 ways to help emergency NHS services include using the pharmacy for minor ailments and advice. There are a number of island pharmacies open over the New Year bank holiday weekend. Visiting NHS 111 online or calling NHS 111 for advice and support before turning up at the Urgent Treatment Centre or A&E. Self-isolating and booking a PCR test if you have any of the COVID-19 symptoms, which include a high temperature, new continuous cough, or loss of smell or taste. Following the national advice about hands, face, space and fresh air where possible, not just for the pandemic, but to help keep down the number of other bugs which thrive in the winter months. Getting your booster jab. If you haven't, you can visit Riverside Vaccination Centre on New Year's Day anytime between 8 AM and 3 PM. Steve Parker, the Medical Director for Isle of Wight NHS Trust, said, "We are experiencing a very busy time in our hospital and across all healthcare services, and we expect the pandemic and the usual winter pressures to bring additional pressures, with our teams working hard to deliver high-quality care. We thank our community for their continued support in following COVID-19 guidelines and getting vaccinated to help protect themselves, their families and the NHS, and I urge you to help us help you by using emergency services appropriately. There's a wealth of other support on offer for non-urgent physical and mental health. You can access healthcare advice from our local community pharmacies and visit NHS 111 online. By taking these steps in the first instance, you will allow the healthcare services to focus on those patients that need our services most. We encourage you to keep safe by practicing the advice given to have your COVID and flu vaccinations, to wear a mask in public spaces, and for those spending time indoors with loved ones, to ensure the space is well ventilated. We wish everyone a safe and healthy new year.
Riverside Centre now open 7 days a week offering walking appointments for 12 to 15-year-olds from Island Echo, read by Elaine. Riverside Centre in Newport is now offering walk-in appointments to people aged 12 to 15 for their first or second COVID-19 vaccinations. The Solent NHS Trust run site at the Riverside Centre is now open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week to walk-in appointments for all COVID-19 vaccinations. This includes first and second after 12 weeks of first dose vaccinations for young people aged 12 to 15, as well as 16 and 17-year-olds. First and second after 8 weeks of first dose vaccinations for people aged 18 and over. Booster vaccinations to people over the age of 18, 3 months after second vaccination. People aged 12 to 15 will need to attend a vaccination centre with their parent or guardian, who will be asked to give their consent. Children can get the first dose of the vaccine from the day they turn 12. Any 12 to 15-year-old who has tested positive for COVID-19 and is not at high risk from COVID-19 must wait 12 weeks before they can have a vaccine. This starts from the date of their positive PCR test. Angela Anderson, Solent NHS Trust Clinical Director of COVID-19 vaccination, said, "Anyone who gets COVID-19 can become seriously ill or have long-term effects. The COVID-19 vaccines are the best way to protect yourself and others. We are opening up even more opportunities for people to get vaccinated. If you haven't yet had your first, second or booster COVID-19 jab, please do take up the offer sooner rather than later." People are also able to book an appointment through the national booking system. School-age immunisation teams will also be running further clinics for second doses, only across Hampshire and Isle of Wight schools from the 10th of January. Angela added, "People who would prefer to book an appointment can do so through the national booking system and as well as the walk-in offer. We will shortly be opening up more appointments for 12 to 15-year-olds. Access to Riverside Centre is via C Street."
This is Michael reading from Island Echo. PCR tests no longer needed after a positive lateral flow test from next week. Testing rules for COVID are to be eased for people without symptoms, who will no longer need to confirm a positive lateral flow test with a PCR from next week. The change will come into effect from Tuesday the 11th of January and will only apply to England for now, says the UK Health Security Agency. They added that although COVID levels are high, people can be confident that rapid tests are highly accurate. It is said that they will review the change when the proportion of people with COVID in England drops below 1%, which currently stands at around 4%, says the Office for National Statistics. So, from the 11th, anyone in England who receives a positive lateral flow device, LFD, test results should report their results on Government UK, that's gov.uk, and must self-isolate immediately, but will not need to take a follow-up PCR test. NHS Test and Trace will be in contact after reporting a positive LFD test result so that their contacts can be traced. After 7 days of the initial positive test, those who test negative twice, 24 hours apart on 6th and 7th days, then can leave self-isolation. Currently, before the changes are implemented, those with a positive lateral flow test who has no symptoms need a PCR test carried out in a lab to confirm their result, which can take days at a time to receive a result. Dr. Jenny Harris, Chief Executive of UKHSA, said, "While cases of COVID continue to rise, This tried and tested approach means that LFDs can be used confidently to indicate COVID-19 infection without the need for a PCR confirmation. I'm really grateful to the public and all of our critical workers who continue to test regularly and self-isolate when necessary, along with other practical and important public health behaviours, as this is the most effective way of stopping the spread of the virus and keeping our friends, families and communities safe. On Tuesday, Boris Johnson recommended England stick with the Plan B restrictions, which include working from home if possible, mask wearing in most public settings, and the use of COVID passports in some venues, meaning there are currently no changes since being introduced in December. The current Plan B measures are due to end on the 28th of January.
This is Patrina reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. 1-star hygiene rating for Cowes Cafe ravaged by fire. A cafe in Cowes, devastated by fire over 18 months ago, has been slapped with a 1-star food hygiene rating, mainly due to the building's condition. Leaseholders of the Watch House barn, however, say a delay in a planning application being approved has hindered any building repairs, but they have complied with officers' request. The coffee shop and restaurant on Bath Road in Cowes was inspected by the Isle of Wight Council's environmental health officers in November last year, where a major improvement necessary, or 1 out of 5, rating was given to the establishment. In their report, officers noting there had been extensive fire damage to the property, leading to the temporary use of a corridor area as kitchen space. Walls, floors and ceilings were all labelled as defective by inspectors, with a large amount of debris, charred wood and exposed plaster still evident in the ceiling. Officers said the relocated kitchen area was unsuitable to be used due to burnt wood, an unsealed floor and heat-damaged walls, not allowing for proper and easy maintenance and cleaning. There was also inadequate workspace for handlers to carry out food preparation duties in a hygienic manner. Inspectors determined the corridor must not be used for food preparation or handling until it's been repaired. It was decided at the inspection no cooking could take place at the premises anymore. Instead, the operators would register their home premises for cooking purposes and then reheat food in a suitable area at the cafe. Speaking about the catastrophic fire, owner of the Watch House barn, Barry Grazier, said they had lost 60% of the cafe's seating area and were only serving a limited menu. When the officer came to do the inspection, Mr. Grazier said they were unaware of the fire damage, which had destroyed the kitchen, upstairs seating area and toilets, but following the findings of the inspection, complied with the recommendations. Mr. Grazier, however, said he did not want to pay the £250 re-inspection fee for a higher rating when officers had agreed they had complied with the requests. The hold-up on rebuilding, which has left the evidence of the fire still all around, was due to the Isle of Wight's Council Planning Department sitting on plans, he said. Over the pandemic, the Planning Authority has warned people delays may be faced to their applications due to an increase in demand. Mr. Grazier submitted his application to alter and convert part of the restaurant into a house at the end of May last year, but has not received the outcome. Although it would tidy up the inside, 7 objections have been received on the application due to a proposed new roof terrace, with neighbours saying it is not in keeping with the Cowes Conservation Area, and it would be detrimental to the heritage landscape. Mr. Grazier has hoped the application would have been approved and building work started before now.
Hello everyone and Happy New Year. This is Steve reading a story from Island Echo, headlined Floating Bridge 6 Review. Potentially poorly designed and several apparent design inadequacies identified by government. Poor design has been identified as a major issue by a government review of the Isle of Wight's troubled Floating Bridge 6. The review found parts of the vessel were potentially poorly designed, with several apparent design inadequacies. Inspectors from the Cabinet Office acknowledged the vessel had experienced significant reliability problems since it first became operational in 2017, as they looked at whether the anticipated benefits of Floating Bridge 6 were being delivered. The so-called Gateway Review was requested by the Solent Local Enterprise Partnership, who mainly funded the new ferry, after multiple breakdowns led to the vessel being out of service, sometimes for months on end. The Isle of Wight Council on Wednesday, that's the 5th of January, released the findings of the review that will help shape the future of the vessel. A new replacement vessel has not been ruled out by the Alliance administration, who took control of the failing vessel in May. Government inspectors found successful service delivery appears feasible with Floating Bridge 6, but significant issues already exist. They awarded the vessel an Amber Delivery Confidence status, which is the middle award. One of the key reasons the council say the status was not green was because of the chain depth issue, which cost the council between £90,000 and £100,000 per year to remedy through a push boat holding it in place. Due to the fast flow of the River Medina, the chain's tension is insufficient to hold the floating end of the vessel in position, tightening and lifting the chains to such a height that exceeds the maximum limit, creating a safety risk to river craft crossing them. Two other main issues inspectors identified were due to the hydraulically operated prow ramps and drive system. In the case of the prow ramps, the review team were told they were being overloaded and were potentially poorly designed, and said the overall structural design of the prow was believed to be poor. The hydraulic drive system has broken down twice, the second time resulting from a complete failure of the drive motors, brakes and drive shaft, which were unable to be repaired and had to be replaced. The team said they were made aware of several apparent design inadequacies directly leading to Floating Bridge 6 being forced out of service. The council has welcomed the results of the review, which took place in November, and says it gives confidence that most of the right measures and management arrangements are in place to ensure Floating Bridge 6's future operation. The authority also says it is committed to delivering the 10 actions set out in the recommendations, 7 of which were deemed essential and 1 critical, including comprehensive reviews about the work done to date and an annual testing regime to check for fatigue cracking. The Cabinet will decide next week to undertake final assessments on whether Floating Bridge 6 is fit for purpose or seek a new vessel. The Isle of Wight Council is also progressing legal mediation against the naval architects and shipbuilders who designed and built Floating Bridge No. 6 to recover some of the council's losses. It has been delayed, the council say, due to the discovery of more defects following the latest breakdown, which adds significantly to the losses. The mediation is set to begin in the week beginning 28th of February. Councillor Phil Jordan has since added, "This latest report shows the amount of work that has been going on across many aspects of the Floating Bridge project, but I am especially reassured by the results the independent review has highlighted. We now have the independent evidence which shows this project is moving in the right direction, even though we know there is still plenty of work to do. Floating Bridge users will be glad and reassured to see the independent review confirming that the key measures and management arrangements are sustainably in place to keep this vital service running. I am happy to accept, support and confirm we will be carrying out the recommendations contained in the Gateway 5 review in the coming weeks and months. One of these recommendations is to undertake a financial analysis showing whether or not it is actually cost effective to keep the current vessel in operation as part of the consideration of any alternative crossing provision. Our next steps in the legal process may depend on the responses and commitments of the other parties in the dispute, but I'm pleased and encouraged by the most recent news that we have a mediation date in the diaries. I'm confident in saying that we remain committed to moving the process forward swiftly, to resolve the matter pragmatically, and to obtain a fair outcome for all concerned, especially our island residents far and wide.
Coppins Bridge works to restart next week from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Elaine. Work to upgrade traffic signals and pedestrian crossings at Newport's Coppins Bridge resume next week. The project had been paused over the festive period, but will start again from Monday the 10th. In the next phase, 3 pedestrian crossings in the lower High Street and across Coppins Bridge will be upgraded. The improvement work will mean that between January the 10th and 28th, it will be necessary to close the lower High Street between Quay Street and Coppins Bridge with the diversion route for HGV vehicles via Lower St James's Street, Honeycross Way and the dual carriageway. Island Road says it has visited businesses to discuss delivery requirements and emergency access to Newport Police Station will be unaffected. Pedestrian access to the lower High Street will be maintained. The project to upgrade signals and crossings at one of the island's busiest junction is part of work under the Highways PFI to improve and maintain the island highway network. Island Road says its work will enable the traffic signals to better adjust their sequencing according to traffic volumes and will also make them more reliable and able to use less energy because of the LED lights and the far safer low voltage electric systems used. The project was paused in December last year so as not to interfere with the Christmas and New Year holiday and the businesses that benefit from that seasonal trade.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. £250,000 may not be enough to solve some of the island's speeding problems. £250,000 may not be enough to solve some of the island's speeding problems, the Isle of Wight Council has said. A speed review being carried out by the authority contains many recommendations to make the island roads safer. A briefing note to the Isle of Wight Council's Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration, however, reveals solving speeding problems will cost more to fix than the Council has been given by the government. The Council says information gathered by the review so far shows the £250,000 from the Department of Transport is not likely to be sufficient to implement all the recommended speed limit schemes, such as 20-mile-per-hour zones. This is due to the cost of installing the necessary measures to manage the traffic speeds at the new limits. Instead, based on the final recommendations of the review, it is suggested schemes will be prioritised and further funding sought to secure other low-priority schemes. It could be another 14 months, though, before any improvement works are started, with a speed review expected to finish in October and work penciled to start in April 2023. In Phase 1 of the Strategic Speed Review completed last year, areas of concern and those areas requested to be considered via the Highway Safety and Improvement Register were identified. The Council says some islanders' concerns spring from the road improvements made through the Highways PFI, which may have resulted in increased speeds. The scope of the review has been widened since and moved into Phase 2, to consider all speed limits. Traffic sampling surveys are being carried out. The Isle of Wight Council's Neighbourhoods and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee will discuss the speed review and its progress at its meeting on Thursday.
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined 2 Islanders named in the Queen's New Year Honours List. 2 Islanders have been recognised for their varying contributions to the local community and society as a whole in this year's New Year's Honours List, it has been revealed. The honours system demonstrates the breadth of service given by people from all different backgrounds across the UK. A total of 1,278 people have been recognised this year, alongside the 1,129 listed on the birthday honours list back in June. 48-year-old Ian Lloyd, a strategic manager for the Isle of Wight Council, receives a British Empire Medal for services to the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ian, who's from Ryde, immediately instigated the set-up of the community helpline and 27 community hubs at the start of the pandemic, which have provided tailored support to over 10,500 shielding Isle of Wight residents. Furthermore, the community hubs mobilised 1,150 volunteers, helping 4,000 residents with 395 emergency food parcels, 1,665 meals, and 1,200 food parcels. From working closely with voluntary sector partners to coordinating activity with local faith groups, Ian is said to have been integral to identifying how to support the harder to reach, sometimes marginalised members of the community and those at highest risk. Chief Executive of Isle of Wight Council John Metcalfe said, "Ian has the ability to inspire colleagues to be the best that they can be. His professionalism and approachability are valued, and never more so than in responding to the impact of COVID-19 on our communities. He has led with sensitivity and provided clarity and direction to ensure that the most vulnerable members of our community receive the care and support that they have needed." Of his honour, Mr Lloyd said, "Being a local Isle of Wight lad who is very passionate about this island and its community, I'm immensely proud of the amazing efforts and willingness of so many staff, voluntary community partners and volunteers alike. I can't begin to describe the lengths the community response went to at such urgent pace to enable the most vulnerable of our island community to have somewhere to turn to for assistance to remain safe, supported with access to food, medication deliveries, and knowing that they were not alone and could reach out for contact support during these uncertain times. This honour is as much about the many people who worked with me for the island's response as it is for me. My hope is that those vulnerable residents of our community feel that we went some way in making a real difference to them in their genuine time of need that we can all be proud of as a community." Diane Foxley from Seaview has also been awarded a British Empire Medal for her services to the community in Seaview. The 84-year-old is said to have been an active and dedicated parish councillor with over 10 years' service, having resigned around 2 years ago. She had responsibility for chairing the local planning committee and overseeing planning-related decisions. Within the parish council, she was a vital source of institutional knowledge due to her long service and experience and longer-term residency in the village. Diane is also noted as being involved in establishing and running Seaview's Community Shop, a vital community resource that was conceived 5 years ago. Over the last year, Diane has had to self-isolate and shield as a result of her age, but in spite of this obstacle, she has continued to manage the community shop, providing guidance to both permanent and voluntary staff, leading management meetings remotely via Zoom, and ensuring the maintenance of a vital lifeline for the community. Alongside these efforts on behalf of the whole village, Diane is also a long-standing volunteer race officer and instructor at Seaview Yacht Club, supporting many club members and participating in the annual regatta.
Isle of Wight murder investigation launched following death at Ryde address from On the Wight, read by Elaine. Isle of Wight Police say there is no wider risk to the public and ask anyone with information to contact them as soon as possible. Isle of Wight Police are investigating the death of a man at a flat in George Street, Ryde. Officers attended the address Tuesday the 4th of January, where the body of the man, aged in his 30s, was discovered. His next of kin have been informed. Police are making a number of inquiries to establish the full circumstances, and as part of our investigation, a 38-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. He remains in custody at this time. Acting Detective Chief Inspector Adam Edwards said, "Incidents of this nature are incredibly rare on the Isle of Wight, and we can appreciate that this will cause some community concern. Please be reassured that inquiries are in hand and there is no wider risk to the public. Residents can expect to see an increased police presence in George Street and the surrounding areas while we conduct our investigation. We are urging anyone with information about this death to please make contact with us. We're particularly keen to hear from anyone that may have seen or heard anything out of the ordinary in the area on the evening of Monday the 3rd of January and into the early hours of Tuesday the 4th of January. Anyone with information is asked to contact police on 101, quoting Operation Amaryllis, or 4422 000 3393. Alternatively, you can contact the independent charity Crime Stoppers 100% anonymously on 0800 555 111 or via their anonymous online form at crimestoppers.uk.org.
This is Michael reading from Isle of Wight Radio. Popular Newport Gym announces closure. A popular Newport gym will be closing its doors for good next month, February. The Strong Room IOW based at Herkstate Road off Riverway has been a hit with gym goers in recent years, but it's now been revealed that it will be shutting on February the 28th. A post on Facebook said that COVID uncertainty combined with the ending of the premises lease has led to the owners to make the extremely difficult decision. A post reads, "We are saddened to inform you all that the Strong Room will be closing its doors permanently on the 28th of February 2022. It's with great regret that we are having to write this notice. 2021 was extremely tough operating. COVID restrictions and lockdowns really pushed us to the limit. The general uncertainty in the economy's future, with possible further lockdowns looming, means we have lost all confidence in regaining the business to a point it can survive. Our decision to close is sealed by our lease coming to an end at Herkstate Road. We looked at relocating with a similar venue, but our options to do this were very, very small. We have tried to give you all as much notice as possible. We are truly saddened about permanently closing, but to continue as we are is just not viable. Some of the equipment in the gym is now being advertised for sale."
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. CLA welcomes new legislation to crack down on cruel illegal hair coursing. The CLA has welcomed the news that the government is to strengthen the powers and penalties available to tackle the barbaric practice of hair coursing. The Country Land and Business Association, CLA, in the southeast represents thousands of farmers, landowners and rural businesses covering Kent, Sussex, Surrey, Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire. Regional Director Tim Bamford said, "Hair coursing is a despicable crime that so often blights rural communities. We have long argued for tougher sentences and for more police powers to tackle these criminal gangs, and are pleased that government has listened. Hare coursing is a global industry, with these criminal gangs often live streaming their cruelty for the purposes of illegally betting. Their crimes go hand in hand with other actions of wanton violence and vandalism, and many of our members, who so often live in isolated communities, live in fear of being targeted. This clampdown is long overdue, and we need to hold government's feet to the fire to ensure these reforms are implemented urgently. The CLA published in 2020 its 5-point action plan to combat hare coursing. Find it here. New legislation to crack down on cruel, illegal hare coursing. Government to introduce tougher sentencing and improved police powers to tackle cruel practices of chasing hares with dogs. New legislation will ensure swift action to tackle criminal activity in the countryside. Fulfills government commitment in the Action Plan for Animal Welfare to introduce new laws on hare coursing. Plans to strengthen the powers and penalties available to tackle the barbaric practice of hare coursing were sent out by the government. Brown hares are widespread across the UK, but numbers are declining. Their population is estimated at less than 500,000 in England, and they are listed as a priority in the UK's Biodiversity Action Plan. An iconic sight in the British countryside, the brown hare is known for its long, black-tipped ears and fast running. It can reach speeds of up to 45 miles per hour, and it is most commonly found on arable land and open grassland. They face a range of threats, including poaching and habitat loss. Hare coursing is an illegal activity where dogs are used to chase, catch and kill hares, and is a serious problem in some rural areas. Not only does hare coursing involve cruelty to wild animals, it is also associated with a range of other criminal activities, including theft, criminal damage, violence and intimidation. In amendments tabled to the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill today, the government has set out measures to strengthen law enforcement for hare coursing by increasing penalties, introducing new criminal offences and creating new powers for the courts to disqualify convicted offenders from owning or keeping dogs. This includes an order to reimburse the costs incurred when dogs are seized in kennels. The proposals include increasing the maximum penalty for trespassing in pursuit of game under the Games Act, the Game Act 1831, and the Night Poaching Act 1828 to an unlimited fine, and introducing, for the first time, the possibility of up to 6 months imprisonment. 2 new criminal offences. Firstly, trespass with the intention of using a dog to search for or pursue a hare, and secondly, being equipped to trespass with the intention of using a dog to search for or pursue a hare, both punishable on conviction by an unlimited fine and or up to 6 months imprisonment. New powers for the court to order, on conviction, the reimbursement of costs incurred by the police in kennelling, dogs seized in connection with a hare course-related offence. New powers for the courts to make an order on conviction disqualifying an offender from owning or keeping a dog. Environment Secretary George Eustace said, "Hares are an iconic and much-loved species. We are acting swiftly to tackle the scourge of hare coursing, which blights rural communities up and down the country, and support the excellent work which the police are doing to combat it." The amendments announced today will fulfil our commitment to the Action Plan for Animal Welfare, protect these beautiful animals, and build on the UK's status as a world leader on animal welfare. To deliver these measures, the government will be tabling amendments to the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill for debate at Lord's report stage in January. Home Secretary Priti Patel said, "Illegal hare coursing has blighted rural communities for too long, resulting in criminal damage, threatening violence and intimidation against farmers and landowners. Those responsible are often involved in other criminal activities, including drugs and firearm offences. I have been a long-standing supporter for essential reforms to our laws to stop hare coursing, which is why we will act to prevent more people from suffering as a result of the actions of a law-breaking minority. We are introducing new measures in the Policing, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill to empower and equip the police and courts with the powers they need to combat this crime. They will deter those breaking the law and send a clear message that we will do all we can to keep our rural communities safe." Chief Inspector Phil Vickers said, "Hare coursing is a scourge for rural communities across the country. Farmers and rural communities have suffered damage, threats, intimidation and assaults. The impact of the cruelty on our wildlife and the welfare of dogs once their coursing life is over is horrific. There is a high level on demand on policing, and though 30 Operation Galileo force are working together with partners to tackle the problem, the legislation has not kept pace with the impact on victims or benefits to offenders. These changes have been sought by a coalition of partner organisations representing rural businesses and are fully supported by the Operation Galileo police forces. We are optimistic that Parliament will take the opportunity to rebalance in favour of victims and enforcers, supporting us to take the fight to the offenders and protect rural communities and wildlife." RSPCA Chief Executive Chris Sherwood said, "We're pleased to see proposals to crack down on hare coursing, a barbaric blood sport that sees hares cruelly chased, caught and killed by dogs. It's time hare coursing was consigned to the history books where it belongs." Hare coursing gangs inflict fear and suffering on their targets, the hare, but our rescue teams have also seen many dogs used for coursing coming into our care having been injured during the sport or abandoned when their owners no longer have use for them. This new legislation will give police and the courts more power to end this cruel practice and the suffering it causes. In May 2021, government announced, as part of the Action Plan for Animal Welfare, to introduce legislation to crack down on illegal hare coursing. Today's announcement marks the government's recognition of the need for urgent action. This is part of the government's wider commitment both to improving animal welfare and to supporting the work of the police in protecting our rural communities.
Hi everyone, this is Steve with a story from Island Echo, headlined "Poultry Keepers Urged to Keep Vigilant Following Hampshire Bird Flu Confirmation." Isle of Wight poultry keepers are being encouraged to stay vigilant after a case of bird flu was confirmed in Hampshire last week. The government has confirmed that the avian influenza virus was confirmed on Thursday 30th of December 2021 near Romsey in Hampshire. Since the 3rd of November, there have been nationwide restrictions to protect poultry from an outbreak of avian influenza, or bird flu. Anyone keeping even a few birds, including chickens, ducks and geese, is legally obliged to follow the requirements, which are designed to keep domestic birds from coming into contact with wild birds, helping to keep them safe from infection. An Isle of Wight Council spokesman said, "Although the island has no confirmed cases of bird flu at present, the outbreak in Hampshire is not far away." Bird owners so far have mostly been careful and thorough in following the requirements for feeding arrangements and biosecurity, but it is important that they are extra vigilant now to continue protecting the welfare of both captive and wild birds. There is good advice available on the government website, along with the latest news on the disease. The UK Health Security Agency advises that the risk to public health from the virus is very low, and the Food Standards Agency advises that avian influenzas pose a very low food safety risk for UK consumers. Properly cooked poultry and poultry products, including eggs, are still safe to eat. The UK government has declared a nationwide prevention zone. This means anyone who keeps poultry, including pets, must ensure the areas where birds are kept are unattractive to wild birds, for example by netting ponds and by removing wild bird food sources. Feed and water birds in enclosed areas to discourage wild birds. Minimise movement in and out of bird enclosures. Clean and disinfect footwear and keep areas where birds live clean and tidy. Reduce any existing contamination by cleansing and disinfecting concrete areas and fencing off wet or boggy areas. The Isle of Wight Council has been contacting owners with larger flocks, but the rules apply to everybody right across the island, even if they only have a few birds. Anyone who keeps poultry, including chickens, ducks and geese, should check the government website for updates and full information on the rules.
Good morning, everybody. This is Imelda reading the letters to the editor today.
And this is Morris, also reading the letter.
And the first letter today is from Mr. P. Jones of Sandown. I was disgusted to read about the trouble at the cows' Christmas celebrations. I have the following questions, though. Where were the police? Section 5 of the Public Order Act is meant to prevent this sort of thing, and if the registration number was given to the police, action could have been taken. Where were the stewards, marshals, etc.? If this had been pre-advertised, asking for marshals, people like myself would have volunteered. Police and organisers need to work harder to prevent scenes such as these.
I have a letter that is headlined Unacceptable Referrals, and the name and address was supplied, but it is in fact withheld. And it reads, further to my previous letter, the County Press on the 24th of the 12th 21, I have now had a response from my GP and have been informed that referral to Medifer is not made by the GP. Referrals sent by the GP are triaged by St Mary's without their control. It is not a service we commission. Unfortunately, this means we have no control over whether or not they are involved. So, the referral to the third party is made by St Mary's. I understand the rationale for this, to reduce the waiting list, reduce pressure on the NHS and to expedite the patient's treatment. These aims are laudable and understandable. However, as someone that worked in the NHS for most of my working life, I find referral without my consent or knowledge unacceptable. While working in the NHS, two things were constantly and consistently drummed into my head: patient choice and patient confidentiality. It seems unbelievable to me that this referral system completely ignores these two. I understand it is legal, but is right? I have now opted out of a system I was unaware existed. Without opting out of the NHS national data, it seems the patient's data can be used for research and planning without the patient's knowledge or consent. Should anyone else wish to look at this, then Google National Data Opt-out. This will take you to the digital.nhs.uk website where you can opt out.
This one is from Paul Knocker of Bembridge. I would like to support many of the points made by George Lee in the County Press on the 31st of the 12th last year, in his response to Ian McKee's claims about illegal immigration. It is astonishing that with the financial and other support that Britain has provided, the French have been unable to arrest the people smugglers who have been making huge profits from this trade in people's lives. We have all seen the pictures of the French police on the beaches watching the overcrowded rubber boats being launched. The rules are clear. People seeking asylum should apply in the first safe country, but the immigrants crossing the Channel have been through several safe countries, so the EU is complicit. A number of articles have referred to the fact that Britain is a magnet because our benefit system is more generous and more accessible. The total costs are hard to find, but the asylum system cost 1.4 billion last year, and hotel accommodation alone cost 70 million, with some block booked throughout the year. One of the key problems has been that the UK border force has been overwhelmed and seriously underfunded for years, impacting the number of trained staff and the essential equipment, including ships. Britain has only 5 border patrol vessels, 3 usually on patrol in the Channel, while Italy has 600 and Greece 240. We've all seen the distressing pictures of immigrants that have been picked up in the Channel by Border Force or RNLI boats. But how many of the arrivals this year have had age, medical or criminal record checks? Many of your readers will have followed the rising number of immigrants who have crossed the Channel this year. I understood that the final figure for 2021 is around 25,700, 3 times the number of 2020. These are the ones counted, mainly through Dover. But we have a friend who during the summer was on holiday in Kent and saw small boats arriving with no checks. The immigrants just ran up the beach and disappeared. I've tried various sources to find the total number of illegal immigrants now in the UK. This is one of the more reliable conclusions from a detailed report. Verdict: the exact number of illegal immigrants in the UK is not known. However, the 2 most recent studies estimate the number to between 594,000 and 745,000 and 800,000 to 1.2 million respectively. This is from the Reuters fact-check team.
Dan Bloomer of RIDE writes support system. For those who might be a little confused about criteria for economic support during the pandemic, I attach a star rating guide. 1 star, self-employed, zilch. 2 star, electoral sheep, Dishy Rishy's £10 meal deal. 3 star, IW Hunt, £10,000 grant. 4 star, Tory Lord, £330,000 pothole grant. 5 star, Ministerial Mate, multi-million-pound contract.
Booster apathy. This one is from Tim Sellers of Apsheath. Since Boris Johnson announced the target number of booster jabs was 1 million a day, I volunteered to help out at the Base Medical who turned Shanklin Medical Centre into COVID Centre. I was asked to help on December the 21st, 22nd and 28th. On each day, the clinic was staffed by full-time staff and volunteers. It was good to be able to help out the doctors' practices, which have looked after my wife and I so very well since we moved to Apsheath from Newport 5 years ago. I'm writing as I want people to know how disappointed I am to see so many missed opportunities for a simple injection. All 3 days I was at the centre, around a quarter of people with an appointment failed to turn up. A large number of these had booked their own appointments online. A large number of the morning misused appointments were contacted. Some of these said they would attend in the afternoon, so were relisted but again failed to attend. It also leads to wasted vaccine. My big complaint is so often the media are reporting how hard it is for the public to get an appointment for their boosters. Yet here we have an appalling apathy which deprives genuine people who want or need their boosters and can't get an appointment. To run a COVID clinic costs a lot of money the NHS can't afford. The Shanklin Clinic is closed for normal duties, causing some people difficulty as their appointments are moved to Sandown wherever possible. The staff at Sandown are put under greater pressure to deal with the increased workload, and it is inevitable some patients aren't going to get appointments as soon as they would like, to be that by phone or face-to-face. Please respect the people who are doing their best to help either with COVID injections or trying to work hard to maintain a health system in very difficult circumstances.
Thanks to kind islanders who put a smile on RAF faces, and this is from Chief Tech David Williams, the RAF. I would like to say a massive thank you to all the members of the Isle of Wight Smile Club for their efforts in preparing and sending boxes as part of the Isle of Wight Operation Shoebox. I have 10 personnel who were deployed on operations away from their families and loved ones for 4 months over Christmas. They all received a Christmas box full of treats and useful items from the Isle of Wight Smile Club. This was a great morale boost for them and definitely put a smile on their faces. One of them, a young single lad, went into strict isolation for 10 days due to COVID on December the 23rd, so his box especially was well received and welcomed. It cheered him up no end. For myself, having grown up and worked on the Isle of Wight before joining the Royal Air Force in 1998, it was particularly pleasing to know that the people there take the time and effort to put these amazing boxes together. I can't thank them enough.
And this one is from Penelope Baker of Lake. Positive signs, but more to be done on the green front. After a difficult and upsetting year, we have a chance to be thankful for the resources of this island and to be positive for its future. Our local retailers are essential to community. New housing aimed for Newport Town Centre will strengthen retail there. But additional sustainable options await the Council to work in partnership with retail for the benefits of us all and our precious environment. Paper bags are an alternative to recyclable plastics, are now often available for vegetables and is local produce, and our island retailers can be proud of their achievements. Refill stations for food and drink is a supermarket challenge, but it is time to consider trials to cut carbon dioxide, plastic and other environmentally damaging aspects, as even recycling is energy draining and with transport and CO2 emissions. Recycling facilities are not obviously advertised, leaving items such as batteries to pile up in the home. Another opportunity for the Council to work in partnership with a retail sector we must support. Environmental education should be a must for this Council to work on in its leaflets. This should be an exciting time for environmental officers and retailers to shake off the gloom and look to the future.
And this is our final letter in this section and comes from Doreen Gazy of Wootton and is headed Single-Use Masks Adding to Our Plastic Waste Problems. One result of the pandemic has not, as far as I can see, been mentioned, and that is the increased litter caused by discarded single-use masks. I see them everywhere. Surely it is no more difficult to take a mask home or put it in the nearest bin than just leave it on the street. Not only is this carelessness unsightly and disgusting, but is also adding to the amount of plastic in the environment, since the masks are plastic-based. Please dispose of your masks responsibly.
And now we go on to white memoirs and nostalgia. And this is written by Albert Strode, Strange Things from Island Beaches. Yes, we know it's cold outside, so in an effort to try to make ourselves feel warmer, here are some peaks at some island beaches in summers gone by. First of all, in summer 1926, the CP reported the romance of the lost railway ticket. A fortnight ago, Mrs. Linton of Wootton set out to spend a week in London. While waiting on the pierhead for the boat, her ticket to Waterloo was blown from her hand and fell into the sea. Mrs. Linton reported her loss to the station master, who gave her a pass for the outward journey. On the third morning after her arrival in London, Mrs. Linton was astounded to receive her lost ticket by post from the Ryde Esplanade railway station, still damp from its immersion in the sea. The ticket had been picked up by a man on the beach at Seaview, who had handed it in. Truly a different world. Next, moral outrage in the summer of 1933. Under the headline, Improper Bathing at Bembridge, the CP reported that 4 boys at Bembridge School, aged from 14 to 16, were summoned for indecent bathing. PC Eagle said that there had been complaints about nude bathing, so he had gone to the beach in plain clothes on June the 28th, where he saw between 30 and 40 boys swimming, and about 15 of them were quite naked. PC Eagle took the names of 4 of them. He told the court, "I asked them why they were not wearing costumes, and one of them replied, 'The school warden has allowed us to do it. We've been doing it for years.' One of the masters came up and asked what was the matter. I told him, and we had received complaints. He replied, 'The school's always allowed it. We haven't been here long. You must be out for promotion.' PC Eagle told the court that within 100 yards there were 12 persons, including 7 families. For the boys, their solicitor pointed out that the summons mentioned indecent bathing, but there was no suggestion of any indecency. The boys went bathing under the supervision of a master. The bench should dismiss the case. The practice was a common one at all public schools, including Eton and Harrow. The fine words didn't help. The chairman said there must be a conviction, and each of the boys would be fined 10 shillings.
4 years later, it was Shanklin's turn to come under scrutiny. Under the headline, Semi-Nudists Walking in the Streets of Shanklin, the county press reported a discussion on what was described as the semi-nude condition in which some visitors are walking in the streets of Shanklin took place at Tuesday's meeting of the council. It seems Shanklin Town Councillor Mr. W. Russell was not happy. He said, "The time has come when a protest should be entered against it. No one objected to this on the shore, but he objected to the condition in which men and women were walking about the streets. Some hairy men with a lot of whiskers lead one to imagine he was at the zoo. It was really disgusting. They should pass some bylaw to keep these people out of the streets. People don't know how to behave themselves. They try to be as rude as they can. It would be unfortunate if it went forth to the world that Shanklin was full of indecent people. Perish the thought." Meanwhile, the war is over. It's the summer of 1946, and Sandown Beach is about to give up one of its secrets. The CP headline is, "Visitors' Strange Find." The CP reported enjoying 3 weeks' holiday in Sandown, Mr. T.H. O'Brien of Welwyn Garden City made a strange find on the western beach at low tide on Monday afternoon. He did indeed. He saw something poking up out of the sand and thought, "That looks like a bicycle pedal to me, but it can't be." In fact, it really was a bicycle pedal. The big question was there anything attached to it? The CP continued. Mr. O'Brien investigated further, assisted by his young twin daughters, and brought a penny farthing bicycle to light after half an hour's digging. The machine, which was minus its tyres but otherwise in fairly good preservation, must have been in the sand for a considerable period, but how it came to be there is a matter for conjecture. It is about 50 years since such bicycles were on the roads, and younger visitors have shown great interest in the machine, on view outside Messrs. Hooper's hut. Hooper rented out bathing machines and deck chairs. What happened to the bike is a mystery. If any reader knows where it went, please get in touch. Now, who says they didn't have fun in the 1950s? In the summer of 1958, the CP reported the staff at Welcome Beach between Lake and Shanklin saw a strange object on the sands when they arrived for work on Wednesday morning. 100 yards away, in the Hope Beach direction, was a Southern Vectis bus stop sign showing Stage 29. Wonderful. And finally, just a few weeks later, Ryde Beach was making the headlines. A Ryde woman who lost her dentures while swimming at the weekend noted the spot and returned at low tide, when she retrieved them from a mass of seaweed.
We now go on to my view. And my view is Ryde works. Why did the sewer at Apley fail? This is Matthew Chatfield. Apley Sewer is one of the biggest on the island. The 1 metre wide pipe carried Ryde's wastewater and stormwater to Sandown for treatment. In January 2021, a small hole appeared in a pathway above the sewer, and Southern Water started work to repair it. This turned into a colossal engineering project, which is only now coming to an end. At one point, dozens of tankers were shuttling back and forth, ferrying an entire town's wastewater from one post to another. A whole new temporary above-ground pumping station, plus hundreds of metres of sewer, was constructed. Although, impressively, most people in Ryde saw no effect on their waste and service, this was at a huge cost in time, labour and ingenuity. The impact on the local area and businesses at Apley was substantial, disrupting use of one of the island's most popular family beaches and parks for a whole season. So, this year-long emergency thankfully comes to a close. We can be grateful for a couple of things. How lucky that there was no significant uncontrolled spill of sewage into the beautiful and internationally protected Apley Sands. If the massive pipe had burst completely, as it apparently was about to do, it would have taken just a few hours to contaminate the beach for a very long time and cause sufficient harm to the delicate shoreline wildlife.
That never happened at Apley. One reason for that is the second thing to be thankful for. We were not left to sort this out by ourselves. For once, I'll confess that the island needed help from the mainlanders, and help was not slow to arrive. In short order, there were swarms of engineers, tons of equipment and fleets of vehicles, all intent on fixing the issue. No doubt there were plenty of hiccups in the process, but the bottom line was that the infrastructure to control the initial emergency was available, and it was put in place fast. But the question I cannot help but ask is, why did this happen? Don't confuse that question with, how did this happen? This incident never has been an engineering failure. It is normal and expected for infrastructure to require repair or replacement. It is understood that much of the wastewater network on the Isle of Wight was constructed long ago and to standards that would not apply today. So with that in mind, how much more important should it have been that the failure of the Apley sewer could have been anticipated and prevented? This was a failure of planning, a failure at Southern Water's strategic level, not operational. If the entire operation of Ryde's wastewater relies upon a single pipe, why was the state of that pipe not known? Are there other single points of failure in the network, uninspected and just waiting to fail? While Southern Water all too regularly in the headlines these days, the resolution of this problem is a rare moment of positive news for them. But for how long?
And we now go on to What's On. And this is from Laurie Little. A comedian Ed Brine's tour is coming to Shanklin. A household name is heading to Shanklin Theatre with 25 years of stand-up under his belt. Award-winning comedian Ed Brine has parlayed his on-stage success into a variety of television appearances in recent years. Now's the chance to see him in his natural habitat on January the 22nd. A regular on Mock the Week and The Graham Norton Show, Ed has recently co-presented Dara and Ed's Big Adventure and its follow-up, Dara and Ed's Road to Mandalay. He somehow managed not to disgrace himself on Top Gear or while tackling one of the world's most dangerous roads. As a semi-professional hill walker and fully paid-up humanist, he also brought his own brand of warmth and honesty to BBC Two's recent hit, The Pilgrimage. But the Irishman is best known for his stand-up performances, where his wit, charm and self-deprecatory observational humour is often underpinned by vitriol and a sense of injustice at a world he feels is spinning ever more rapidly out of control.
And now, in additional news, I have a rather lovely headline that reads, Baby Boy is the Isle of Wight's 2022 first. A little boy was born, the first to be born on the island this year. Harlan was born at St Mary's Hospital on New Year's Day. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust said, congratulations to Chelsea and Jordan on the birth of their beautiful baby boy Harlan. He was the first baby to be born at the Isle of Wight maternity services on New Year's Day. The couple said, we were so happy that Harlan arrived safely, and it was also such a nice surprise for him to be the first baby born on the island in 2022. We cannot praise and thank everyone who took care of us during pregnancy, delivery and aftercare enough. What a way to start the new year.
And now we have a bit further on the clean water issue. Southern Water to make Isle of Wight priority in clean-up plan. Southern Water is set to put the island at the front of the queue to massively cut sewage outfalls into rivers and the sea. The utility giant has confirmed in a letter to the Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley that it will use the island as a pathfinder site to cut sewage dumping by 80% for around 90% of the island. Islanders have taken part in a number of protests over the past few months, with the Stop the Sewage Isle of Wight Facebook group highlighting regular discharges, including one for nearly 7 hours near Totland Pier on Wednesday of last week. Mr. Seeley says he has now won a commitment from Southern Water to tackle the issue. Southern Water says the priority will be cutting the amount of surface water entering the Sandown Waste Treatment Centre by what it calls a number of engineering and nature-based solutions by 2030. The water firm says this is the heart of the issue, as the Sandown Works treats 90% of the island's sewage. Its plan includes surveying and mapping to understand clearly the pathways that surface water takes and how it enters the sewer system, identifying the sewer system catchments with the biggest impact upon Sandown Works, demonstrating some of the options for reducing the amount of surface water entering the system and slowing the flow of surface water into the system, identifying and developing the partnerships required to deliver this approach across the whole of the Sandown catchment. However, Mr. Seeley says, while he welcomes the move, 90% isn't good enough, and he is looking for action for the whole of the island. The other 10% of sewage is dealt with at 19 smaller catchments. The plans were confirmed in a letter to the Island MP on December the 20th. Mr. Seeley said, "The government's groundbreaking environment bill demands that water companies raise their standards. On the back of that, I've made clear that the Isle of Wight must be prioritised to become an example of best practice. Our rivers and beaches have high amenity value and ecological significance. We need improvements here first. I welcome Southern Water's commitment to prioritise the island. It is a right thing to do." Asked whether it went far enough and was quick enough, he said, "I will be pushing for and much as possible, as fast as possible. But the reality is I and the government are delivering what no one has before, which is ensuring water firms have a mandate and instruction to clear up." Southern Water's Director of Environment and Corporate Affairs, Dr. Toby Willison, said, "The Pathfinder project on the Isle of Wight will continue our work to improve the quality of the island's environment, especially the beaches."
This is an article from the Isle of Wight County Press. The headline is "Stuck in Hospital at Christmas." More than 50 people spent Christmas Day at St Mary's Hospital because they had nowhere else to go. The bed blocking crisis is continuing at the Isle of Wight NHS Trust Hospital, where dozens of patients deemed fit to leave failed to be discharged during December, figures reveal. Patients should leave hospital on the same day they are assessed as fit for discharge, NHS guidance states. However, there have been issues in tackling the huge backlog caused by the pandemic and lack of availability in care homes for patients to go to. NHS England data shows 40 patients being cared for at St Mary's were eligible for discharge on December the 12th, but couldn't leave. A week later, on December the 19th, this number had dropped to 30 patients. However, by Christmas Day, there were 51 patients unable to leave despite being well enough to, and 52 on Boxing Day. Across England, 69% of those ready for discharge on December the 12th continued to occupy a hospital bed. Latest available data shows St Mary's has 24 patients with COVID, including 3 on ventilation beds. Tim Gardner, Senior Policy Fellow at the Health Foundation, said issues stem from a lack of suitable capacity outside acute hospitals. He said problems with discharge often lead to problems admitting patients to wards from A&E departments, which in turn causes delays in ambulance handovers and can affect the ability of the ambulance service to respond to new emergencies. He added staff shortages were also playing a part.
Ventnor Cemetery Chapel windows smashed by thugs. We are trying to improve the cemetery, then we come up and find something like this. This is Laurie Little. Thugs have destroyed the windows and attempted to kick the door in at a beautiful cemetery chapel. The chapel, situated in the middle of Ventnor Cemetery on Newport Road, has been left in a terrible state, with shards of glass all over the ground around it. The white door is covered with marks, clearly showing the soles of shoes or boots where the vandals have tried to kick the doors in. The door has come away from its frame, but a secure lock prevented a break-in. The windows have been smashed with large stones. Mark Jeffries of the newly formed Friends of Ventnor Cemetery have informed police and local Isle of Wight councillor Rodney Downer of the crime. He said, "I feel downhearted. We're trying to improve the cemetery, and then we come up and find something like this has happened. It is mindless because there's nothing of any value inside this chapel." Hampshire Constabulary said the incident is under investigation and officers are following all reasonable lines of inquiry.
On track for Ray rename. The Fairway Athletics Centre in Sandown could be renamed in honour of a popular island coach to ensure his legacy lives on. Ray Scoville, who had been a community development officer in the Isle of Wight Council's sports unit, died in January 2021 at the age of 76 after battling COVID. Following a request by the Isle of Wight Athletics Club, Cabinet members will consider renaming the centre the Ray Scoville Athletics Centre when they meet next Thursday. One of the best-known sporting figures on the island, Ray had been the coach at the club for more than 30 years. He founded the Medina Park Run and Junior Park Run and started the Fun in Athletics sessions for younger children to develop their love of athletics and fitness. In 2011, he was the Island Games coordinator when the event was held on the island. In 2014, he picked up the Isle of Wight Radio's Volunteer of the Year award before receiving an Isle of Wight Sports Achievement Award in 2017 for service to sports. He was best known for teaching himself field event coaching and trained several island sporting stars, including hammer thrower Andy Frost and Island Games medal winners Amy Clark and Wallace Canning. He also coached Stephen Duff, who won medals at the World Fire and Police Games.
Huge boulder among Ventnor debris. A boulder the size of a small car fell onto the street in a peaceful residential area of Ventnor. No one was injured and no property was damaged during the rockfall at Steep Hill Court Road on Sunday. The huge boulder, together with smaller rocks and fragments, fell away from an exposed rock strata beneath the property. The rockfall was cordoned off with tape and cones by Island Roads.
Heroin habit motive to Newport burglary. A Newport man has been spared jail after burgling his neighbour's home to fuel his heroin habit and being found with stolen bank cards. Keenan Bradbury of School Lane appeared before Isle of Wight magistrates on Tuesday. The 25-year-old admitted burglary, theft from a vehicle and possession of cannabis between January the 2nd and 3rd, 2021. Prosecutor Liz Miller said at 2:30 a.m. the victim had been woken up by her partner, who was sleeping downstairs while recovering from COVID. Her partner had noticed Bradbury in the kitchen and saw him leave. The victim went outside, spotted Bradbury on his driveway and demanded he give her back her belongings. Ms. Miller said Bradbury told the victim it had been someone else who had stolen her possessions. Bradbury later went to flee on an e-scooter, and when the victim said she would call the police, Bradbury shouted that it would be the last thing she would do. Ms. Miller said the victim noticed her stolen tablet money pot and purse in the mud by a fence on Bradbury's property. Police found cannabis and 3 bank cards in someone else's name in Bradbury's room. Police contacted the owner of the cards, who confirmed they had gone missing from his vehicle, along with a phone and a drill. Oscar Vincent, defending, said Bradbury had a recent track record of abiding by court orders. The burgled property had been left unlocked, and while there were children living at the address, there had been no ransacking or damage caused. Bradbury had started using heroin, and his offending was motivated by his habit. Bradbury was given a 6-month prison term suspended for 18 months to include drug rehabilitation and 20 rehabilitation days. He was also ordered to pay costs of £85 and £128 surcharge.
Well, this concerns the Nightingale Hotel in Shanklin. Controversial hotel goes emerald green. It's the end of the Nightingale Hotel in Shanklin, and its owner says the controversial black-painted walls and murals are going. Dino Yarkin said he has turned over a new leaf, and in these words, after 6 years of parties, noise, chaos and controversy, he is turning the hotel into a holistic healing retreat. He told the county press, "I'm closing down the hotel. I've actually shut it down already, so it's the end of the Nightingale Hotel." He plans to ditch the Gothic and black themes, and instead the hotel will be revamped into the Emerald Healing Centre, its colours of dazzling white, gold and emerald. The swimming pool is being turned into a peace garden, complete with 16 feet teepee, and the former castle room is going to be used for massages, and the bar will lose its Gothic look and instead become a space for yoga and Tai Chi. The restaurant will remain as it is, serving vegetarian and vegan food only. The reason for the change is that Dino says he has left behind his previous lifestyle of drugs, alcohol and rock and roll after meeting a healer who herself has drastically changed her path in life. After spending time at a healing retreat in Portugal, he plans for his own venue are now well underway, and he plans to offer a wide range of treatments and workshops for mind, body and soul. Dino has set up fundraiser for fans to donate to help the transformation. Find it on his social media pages. The hotel on Queen's Road offers 27 bedrooms. Previously, as the Nightingale Hotel, it achieved notoriety for its exterior decor in 2018. Then it was the subject of complaints over its public stance over COVID regulations last year, before hitting the headlines again for its controversial 9/11 party.
Group forms to fight Village Homes plan by Laurie Little. Bembridge residents mobilised over Christmas to oppose a planning application for 57 new homes on the outskirts of the village. Thornwood Estates has made an application on a field currently outside the village settlement boundary, but was recently included in a draft version of the forthcoming island planning strategy. The field is adjacent to Stein Road and Hillway Road, and the 57 homes would be in addition to the 9 houses already granted permission. Residents say a separate application on adjacent land is anticipated in 2022, which could see the total new homes for Bembridge rise to 180. A group of residents have set up a new not-for-profit community interest group, Build a Better Bembridge, with the stated aim of safeguarding the way of life of the community. Together with Isle of Wight councillor Joe Robertson, who represents the village, Build a Better Bembridge is supporting those who wish to register their comments and objections. They have set up a website, www.buildabetterbembridge.co.uk, and a Facebook page. Councillor Robertson said the period for public comments fell over the Christmas period with a deadline of next Wednesday. He is keen for people to register their views on the council's planning portal. He said, "I am opposed to building on this land and expanding the settlement boundary towards Bembridge Airport and National Trust land. The village has suffered major flooding in 2021, including on both roads bordering this field. Whether it be 57 new homes or 180, the village cannot cope with the existing pressures, let alone more houses. Register your views on the council's planning portal at publicaccess.iow.gov.uk under application 21/01884/FUL. Those without internet can ask the parish council for a copy of the application and can write to the council by post. Ben Wood of Build a Better Bembridge said, "We are not anti-development. In fact, we applaud our village parish council's responsible neighbourhood development plan, but fundamentally, our village has outgrown our infrastructure, with traffic backing up, drains and sewage polluting our beaches and coastline, plus our village lacks a GP surgery, local employment and transport links." Councillor Robertson added, the council should show more ambition by bringing forward brownfield sites like the old Camp Hill prison site.
Sad loss of pioneer Toby. A beloved reading dog, understood to be the first of its kind on the Isle of Wight, has died. Tricia Owen's 18-year-old bearded collie Toby was a pioneer. He was the first dog to go into school on the island. Once a show dog, Toby found new life in retirement through the Read to Dog scheme, helping children at Ride Academy develop their confidence and ability with a book in hand. A request has been put in for a reading dog at the school, said Tricia, a former oncology nurse. We retired to Bembridge from South East London and somehow said he would make a good pet as a therapy dog. When he was being assessed, I said he's drawn to children, and children are drawn to him because he's hairy and cuddly. I then got a newsletter about a Read to Dog programme, and when I called, they asked if I was near Ryde. The school has been inquiring about a dog for 18 months. Toby gave children the confidence to read. Mothers were calling up, trying to get their children into his class. That's how popular he became. Toby later received a medal from the Bearded Collie Club at a special awards event and represented Pets as Therapy at Crupps. In October 2018, Tristan took him to Rookley Village Hall to help home-taught children develop their reading ability and confidence. A year later, he won White Link Dog of the Year. He opened the gates for others, and I'm just so proud of him, said Tricia. Tricia said, I want to thank Island Vets for their end-of-life care and Pets at Rest for their care and support. Both went above and beyond what I expected.
Harbour Plan, next steps announced. A new version of the master plan for Newport Harbour could be considered by the Isle of Wight Council. The next steps over what to do to revitalise the area are being considered by senior councillors as new planning guidance comes forward. Following a long consultation process, the publication of the master plan for Newport Harbour in 2019 put forward a number of possible features, with the wider aim of regenerating the whole of the historic county town. Options suggested included restaurants, housing, commercial space, new car parking, higher education resources, a pedestrian bridge, a rebuild of the existing Riverside Centre, a new hotel and a cultural venue. Now the Council's Cabinet will be considering whether to publish a new version of the master plan as a supplementary planning document for the area. If adopted, after a period of public consultation, they say it will put more weight on the plans and help make it easier for future proposers to bring the aspirations to reality. Councillor Paul Fuller, Cabinet Member for Planning and Community Engagement, said, "This new planning document is another step on the way. There will be further consultations when more detailed planning applications are made. We welcome more input from residents before we make any final decisions." Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, who has responsibility for regeneration, said, "It's a large brownfield site full of history and importance for Newport."
Charged after St Lawrence incident. A Newport man will appear before a judge next month, charged with false imprisonments following an incident in St Lawrence. On Wednesday, December the 22nd, police were called to Woodland near Undercliff Drive, following reports of a woman being assaulted. The woman did not sustain serious injuries, but 2 males were arrested. Of the 2 detained, a 17-year-old boy, arrested as part of police inquiries, was released with no further action. The other, 28-year-old Douglas James Knight of Laundry Lane, Newport, was charged with false imprisonment with intent to commit a sexual offence. Appearing before Portsmouth magistrates on Christmas Eve, Mr Knight was remanded in custody to appear between a judge at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on January the 31st. He did not enter a plea.
2 new Deputy Lord Lieutenants to serve the Isle of Wight. 2 new Deputy Lord Lieutenants have been appointed to serve the Isle of Wight in appointments that remain with them until their 75th birthdays. Dr. Jonathan Nainby Luxmore was both baptised and married in Bembridge. He read medicine at Lincoln College, Oxford and St Bartholomew's Hospital and served 11 years in the Royal Army Medical Corps. For 28 years he was a GP and trainer and was involved with establishing UTAS, a charity to support the isolated farming and village community. He was a trustee of St Teresa's Hospice, Darlington, and AVF Launchpad, which provides support for veterans going from military to civilian life. Now retired, he served as Commodore for Bembridge Sailing Club from 2019 to 2021. Jeff Underwood was born on the Isle of Wight. He is founder and CEO of IFPL Group, which designs and manufactures equipment for in-flight entertainment systems, which is a 5 times winner of the Queen's Award for Enterprise. He was president of the Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce and founded the Isle of Wight Technology Group. Jeff was the Isle of Wight High Sheriff from 2019 to 2020 and set up and chaired the COVID Crisis Appeal Committee. He is founder of the Wight Aid Foundation.
Threadbare Fire Service slammed. Cuts to staffing levels and the impact of COVID isolations has left the fire service at an absolute threadbare level of cover, the Fire Brigade Union has warned. The recent spread of Omicron has hit the Hampshire and Isle of Wight and Fire and Rescue Service, leaving one mainland station with no firefighters available for duty on December the 28th, the union said. Gosport had no rostered firefighters available, and multiple other stations were left with fire engines unavailable due to staff shortages. Other firefighters had to be moved to Gosport from another local station to provide cover. The Fire and Rescue Service said the absences were not due to COVID. The union said in the period from December the 28th to January the 2nd, numerous fire stations were short-staffed. On all of these 4 days, multiple fire stations were so short-staffed they were left with fire engines unavailable. The worst day was December the 28th, with 5 engines unavailable. The service has around 40 people self-isolating on that day. Mark Chapman, Regional Secretary for the Fire Brigades Union, said, "The service is at its absolute threadbare level of cover. We even had one fire station essentially left without any firefighters, having to borrow firefighters from another station. That's because the government has cut the service to its bare bones, with Hampshire losing almost 1 in 5 of its firefighters since 2010 and the Isle of Wight losing more than 1 in 4. The Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services says, as of January the 3rd, we had 64 firefighters off with COVID or self-isolating, and that represents 4.4% of the workforce. Area Manager Kevin Evanet, Assistant Director of Operations, said, "Like all emergency services, we have robust contingency plans to cover staff absences and keep those plans under review to make sure we can continue to respond when needed," he said. Gosport Fire Station was fully crewed on December the 28th. Staff absences unrelated to COVID were managed in line with our contingency plans.
Drunk teen rolled car into a field. An NHS kitchen porter who rolled his car into a field while almost twice the drink drive limit told police he was the passenger and the driver had run off. Ben Sebastian Gerard, 19, admitted drink driving and driving without a licence on the racecourse in Whippingham during the early hours of December the 4th. Police on mobile patrol spotted Gerard's upturned Fiat Punto in a field as they passed over the racecourse roundabout. Officers found Gerard standing by his vehicle and he said he was the passenger and the driver had run off, said Anne Smout, prosecuting, and the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, December the 21st. After he was taken to St Mary's Hospital, Gerard did a breath test and blew 66 micrograms. The legal limit is 35. Gerard of Adelaide Grove, East Cowes, was the car's registered keeper, but did not have a licence. Gerard appeared with no previous convictions. For Gerard, Henry Farley said his client was very ashamed and his parents were furious with him. He concedes he did a very stupid and dangerous thing. In the heat of the moment he was not straight with the police, said Mr. Farley. Mr. Farley said his client had enjoyed a night out in Ryde, having travelled there and back by bus, but on his return home he panicked when he realised he had left his bag, which contained his NHS identification, in Ryde. He decided to get into his car to go to get it. Gerard was banned from driving for 20 months. He was also ordered to pay a fine of £250, with £85 costs and a £34 victim surcharge.
New look at St Mary's entrance. Charitable funds have helped spruce up the entrance to St Mary's Hospital. The Isle of Wight National Health Trust used the funds to purchase 14 outdoor picnic bench sets and 2 large wooden planters from the not-for-profit CIC Care in the Garden based at Palmer's Brook Nursery in Wootton. The addition of new outdoor seating has created an improved green corridor of community space. And with that, this is the end of our reading session for today, and we wish you all a very happy weekend. Hope it doesn't snow, and take care of yourselves.
So it's goodbye from me, Morris.
And goodbye for Imelda.
There is no scaffolding news this week. We have 2 In Touch programmes this week. The first is about a former British Army soldier, then and now, and the second concerns the lives of youngsters. So first, back in 2007, Craig Lundberg was a decorated British Army soldier. He was one of the Army's youngest junior leaders and was frequently being used by Special Forces. However, during a rooftop firefight, Craig was hit with an RPG and was blinded instantly. Shortly after this happened, Peter visited him in Liverpool to hear about how he'd coped with his sudden sight loss. Back then, Craig's determination to lead a normal life and the maturity in which he faced the realities of becoming blind made us want to revisit him 14 years later. This episode is all about how Craig's life has panned out, his pursuits in extreme sport, his businesses, and about the day-to-day life of his family man. Presenter is Peter White and the producer is Beth Hemmings. Then we go on to the lives of youngsters. Kerry Burke, Eli Morrison and Rhys Watt are all from Scotland and are members of the youth form Haggai. Haggai first began in 2007 as part of the RNIB Scotland. It's a place where young people from all over Scotland can meet to socialise and campaign on issues such as accessible transport, the need for more educational material in formats such as Braille and audio, and more. We speak to the 3 youngsters about their involvement in Haggai and their lives more generally. We ask for their thoughts in relation to education, jobs, relationships and the Scottish Youth Parliament, of which Kerry and Eli are members. The presenter is Peter White and the producer is Beth Hemmings.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
We will shortly be arriving at Liverpool Line 3.
Hello,
Craig.
Watch the door.
Hiya.
How are you?
How are you?
Oh, you can tell you're blind.
Why?
By the fact that I just wiped it out with the door. Long time no see. What was it?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
Come in, mate.
Can I come
Watch
in?
a step. Yeah,
Okay. Lovely. Well, it's good to see you anyway.
Yeah, and you? Right, so we've got to open this door. So there's a guide dog in there, Comet. He's alright. He's
right.
daft.
Okay.
And you've got a little rat cat dog ferret thing. It's a little tiny dog. Little tiny dog. Wait till you feel him. Yeah, as soon as you come in, there's a couch.
Hello, dog.
Did you feel him, Peter?
Yeah.
Little hamster, little gerbil. Milo, his name is.
Over the almost 5 decades in which I've been presenting In Touch, I've met some pretty impressive people. but few more impressive than the man whose story we're about to tell you tonight. We first introduced Craig Lundberg to In Touch listeners on Christmas Day 2007, the year in which just a few months earlier he'd lost his sight, completely and without warning. He was only 21 at the time, and what so impressed me as I talked to him then was the speed with which he'd come to terms with his situation and his determination still to make a good life for himself. The reason for our meeting again 14 years on was to discover how things had panned out for him. But first, this is Craig back then, describing what happened when he led his section of young soldiers onto a rooftop in Iraq, searching for terrorists.
So I got my team together and I went up on the roof to help my mates out. Then we were in a firefight for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, fighting roof to roof with the insurgents. Before I got hit by 2 rocket-propelled grenades, one at the wall that I was behind and then one at me, practically on the chest. Lucky to be alive, really. My mate helped me up. I tried to carry on, but obviously I was too injured, practically blinded instantly. My main aim was to make sure my team got off the roof in one piece. I didn't really care about me. If I got injured or killed in the process of getting them off that roof, then so be it. That's just the way it was. That's what my job entailed, and their lives were in my hands. So all I thought about was I weren't having it that Iraqi was going to kill me. so I was just determined to get up because I thought I'm not getting beat. Because I've got quite a bit of a winner's attitude as well. I don't like losing.
Craig, when you and I first met, you'd lost your sight for only a year, which was obviously the big thing we came to talk to you about. But what struck me at the time and listening back was that you'd also lost your career, a career you'd only just discovered. And I just wondered how you cope with that loss of direction.
By just being honest with myself. I couldn't do no more being a sniper. I couldn't do no more being a leader of men, because being a blind sniper is not quite effective unless the enemy's going to run around with bells on, do you know what I mean? So I come to terms with it quite quick. Not saying it didn't hurt, because it did. And I probably threw myself into a lot of challenges after that to sort of compensate for that. Because when I was in the army, I wanted to go for SAS. And that's probably my biggest regret, not having the chance to do selection, to know was it good enough or wasn't it good enough. And that's probably the only thing that I regret about it. But actually moving on, no, I just come to terms with it quite quick, because that's not my life no more. I wasn't a soldier.
But were you wondering how you could use that talent for leadership? Because I remember you said to me at the time, I left school, didn't have qualifications, suddenly found I could do this.
Definitely. The skills that I'd learned in the army at such a young age, joining the army at 16 and going to Harrogate and being a junior leader, I then applied that into the businesses that I now run. And I applied that with me attitude, and definitely sort of coming over adversity was definitely sort of planted in from a seed from the army, I think.
But the businesses didn't come straight away, did they? I mean, presumably you were, again at the time, learning how to use a cane, getting around, beginning to do all sorts of things. Initially, a lot of it was pretty sport-oriented, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, at the time, I remember a welfare worker coming to see me, and I said, right, well, I need to do something. I said, I'll volunteer, I'll do anything. Apart from, I won't make coconut mats, I won't make broom handles, I certainly won't make cups of tea. And she went, okay. And she found me a group called the Actioneers, working with a load of blind kids. They're doing sport. And I got there and I realised how lucky I was. Lucky's not the right word, I don't think. I don't know, it's a hard one, because I think the debate goes from both sides of people who have lost their sight and people who were born with sight. Who's the luckiest? But I felt, me personally, that I had 21 years of sight, and then I was playing sport with these kids who were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, who'd never had sight, who'd never seen a football, and I was learning off these kids. And then that got me into blind football then. So I was playing blind football, and then it went on from there.
One thing I would like to ask you, because in a way we didn't talk about this originally, but I mean, it wasn't just that you lost your sight. You had pretty horrific injuries, didn't you? And as you said at the time, people told you afterwards that you shouldn't have survived. Did you have any after effects from that?
Yeah, no, well, there's the mental side of it, as we're all aware of PTSD and things like that. Lucky enough, I haven't struggled mentally. I'm not saying that I don't have down times, because I definitely do.
But everybody does.
But everybody does, exactly. And I don't think that I've struggled, unlike some soldiers. I consider myself really lucky in that way. Me injuries physically, I broke my jaw, I lost 3 teeth, I broke my cheek, my eyes are prosthetic, and I broke my humerus, which is obviously your upper bone in your arm, in 3 places. So I've got plates and skin graft. But as it goes, apart from my eyes, no, I'm in good shape.
Which is just as well, because, as we said, sport became a very important thing to you, didn't it? We mentioned playing football for England. You ran a marathon, I think, in the first year. What was that all about, doing all that sport? Because you're still doing it to some extent.
I think there was a number of things. I think the marathon was because when I was in hospital, the London Marathon was on at the time, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And I think that was sort of just proving to myself that I could still do it. I think I was still, it's going to sound really stupid, but like still manly. Do you know what I mean? I was still like, because don't forget, I'm going from being one of the youngest corporals in the British Army, being a sniper, being top of my game in a war zone and seen as elite. And then all of a sudden my eyes are taken away and I've got this vulnerability about myself. With the football, I think it was just fitting in at the right time. And the lads that I was with were very good for me within the first year to be around, because they weren't your typical sort of view of what blind people should be or should be doing or shouldn't be doing. So I learned loads off them, the different approaches that blind people take to how they live their life. And they give me a lot of confidence.
You're doing Ironman training?
I've put myself down for an Ironman, yeah. So I'm doing Ironman Austria. And everyone goes, oh, Austria. And I was like, yeah, because Ironman Bolton just doesn't have the same ring to it. And Ironman Wales is like one of the hardest in the world. So for you listeners who don't know what an Ironman is, an Ironman is a triathlon. It's a 2.5 mile swim. It's a 110 mile bike ride. And then it's a marathon all after each other.
So all this is all very well, but of course it doesn't get you a job, which is where you were in 2007. I guess in 2008 you were thinking, what am I going to do? Did you have any idea what you were going to do?
No, I was in a lucky position. Okay, unlucky that I nearly had my head taken off, granted. But in a lucky position that I was getting compensated by the army. I didn't get compensated nowhere near enough for what your eyes are worth, but it is what it was. I've been given this opportunity that this is my army career given to me in one go. I need to do something with it. I need to make it work. So I had to look around me and I sort of thought, right, okay, what can I do? Well, builders are like soldiers, do you know what I mean? And I got into houses. I invested in houses.
So where does Craig the businessman come in then? I would imagine you didn't know an awful lot about this stuff when you started.
I knew nothing. It just come in from learning, speaking to other people, do you know what I mean? And I went, right, how'd you do it? Explain it to me. And then I just started viewing houses. I started with the builders, so I'd done loads of things. So I stripped all the walls in the properties, I knocked some of the walls down. The things that I could do, I done. And then the things that I couldn't do, I got people in to do. And then I just learned. And that's all it is then, it's just a process. Which then obviously being in the army was fine for me. I just repeat it. And now I've got 22
houses.
Well, shops. Flats and houses.
Yeah.
Mixed. It's a mixed portfolio.
It's a mixture. How do you do the practical side of this? Because for all your competence and capability, there are things in these jobs that you need sight for. Do you rely on specific people?
I'd like to say no. And it's just me. Do you know what I mean? And I'm the great one. And I've done it all by myself. But that's not true. Yeah, I've got a PA who works for me full time called Gary.
I used to have a building company. I was just bored of it and just done enough. So I applied for this job that didn't actually tell me he was blind or anything like that, but just said that a PA was needed. The fit was more apt because although he was looking for a PA, due to him having a property portfolio and my building knowledge and stuff like that, it just seemed to be the perfect fit. And yeah, 8 years later, I still can't get away. It is a long running joke that this job title is called Varied. Because you name it, Gary will fix it, don't worry.
What's the oddest thing you've ever had to do for him?
Trek for 6 days in China. I was not expecting that when I signed up for this job. We went and done the Great Wall of China for Alder Hey. I thought, like, you know, I'd be, just a bit of driving around, a bit of paperwork, a bit of that. Next minute I'm on an 8-hour flight to China.
How would you describe the relationship now? Because it's 8 years, you say. It started as a PA. Are you just a PA?
It's varied. It's definitely varied. I work for Craig. Craig is my boss. But it's just a case of we come in and whatever's put in front of us in the day, we will get through together. When I leave of a night, I know what I'm doing. By the time morning comes, it's changed and I never know what's happening. So tomorrow we're going to do this, this and this. Superb. I'll come in prepared for it and you go, scrap that, we're going to go abseiling off to St John's Tower. I'm like, whoa, hang on. You never know what's going to happen.
I've got him who drives me around and then helps me with day-to-day things as well, like sometimes taking the kids to school, and we've got a truck, and I own an estate agent which does lettings and sales. We've got approximately, I think, about 170 houses that we manage for other people, and then a sales department. And I think we've got about 8 people that work for us altogether. My partner, Nicola, she's the estate agent. We met through the estate agency.
This is Pete.
Nicola?
Hello, nice to meet you. You're all right?
Nice to meet you. So he's got you in here working while he just gets about talking to journalists.
I'm used to it. I think I described him as a wag, like a footballer's wife, aren't you?
So we got the shop together and it was just us. Then as we built the shop and it grew, our relationship become more hostile. And it was working together. We're both very strong-minded.
We're both alpha male, aren't we? We both think that our idea is the best idea. And I think when it came to the shop, we have kind of things to deal with in our relationship that other couples don't have to deal with. We didn't kind of get a minute to just kind of be a young couple as such, and work just became a really difficult environment. And we then spent some time where we both still were heavily involved, and I think over the past sort of 12-18 months we've come to a bit of a more mutual agreement where you don't really have anything to do with the shop now, do you? Like the day-to-day running, I do all of it, and I do talk to you about things, but only the same way that I would speak to like any other partner that maybe didn't own it with me. It took a long time for us to get to that point even, didn't it? Because obviously Craig said he's a landlord and his properties are managed here, but he also owned the shop, and it was that fine line between, are you a landlord or are you an owner? What are you calling us as today? Are you coming into the shop today as a landlord, or are you coming in as a business owner? And that's just part of it. It's just our family. Like we don't really have it any other way, do we? It's just the way we are.
So you're a family man now. How do you view the sort of business of being a dad? Is that any different to what you think it might have been like if you'd been able to see?
Totally different. Being a dad is really hard. Being a blind dad is really hard, especially when you've got 3 young kids. So I've got Sophia, who's aged 3, Ben, who's aged 9, and I've got Max, who's aged 6.
This is Max.
This is Max. This is Max. This one.
This is Max.
Yeah.
Hi, Max.
Go on then. Cool. Did you have a good day? You don't know? Oh, one of them days again.
Do you want to know what it's like having a blind dad? Ah! What's so terrible about it?
Because it is.
What's the worst thing about having a blind dad then?
Nothing.
Nothing? So, Max, what do you think of our Ben then?
He's terrible.
He's terrible. You alright?
Hey Ben.
Had a good day?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
We done some art.
Alright.
And I didn't get my detention.
Oh, there you go.
And also I won the raffle.
Oh, what'd you win?
This mini pencil.
You go home then. Drop it off.
Hey Dad, this morning, bunch of little toys. And I got yo-yo.
Yo-yo?
Yeah, and then I got one where it was a little fishing rod, and at the end a magnet. We got 2 fishes with magnets attached to them.
Oh, okay.
And then we shared like this little instrument, I forgot what they were called. Oh, they called a flute. Where it's like dead long and then it's got the holes on the top. And we got a little
flute or a penny whistle?
Yeah. A penny whistle. So I'm pretty sure you don't even know what a penny whistle is. I do.
What's a penny whistle cost?
We can buy it. I would imagine a penny.
Here you go, guys.
Great.
This is mine.
And then we do it all again the other way down in the morning.
I'd done a talk. I had the great honour of speaking at our local cenotaph this year, which was actually in Liverpool Cathedral. And when I was asked to speak, you hear this word all the time, sacrifice. And I thought, everyone goes on about like the people that died or the people that were injured. Rightly so, because they have paid the ultimate sacrifice. But it's not just their sacrifice, like my kids sacrifice all the time. And they know no different, by the way. I'm just their dad. But it's different to me, like sort of when you can't read them a bedtime story, or you can't just pick them up and put them in a car and go, well, this is where we're going. Being blind, I think it's got to be a little bit more thought about, or a little bit more organised. Things like when your little boy scores a goal and he's putting thumbs up at you and you're not putting thumbs back at him. That hurts, do you know what I mean? Because it's not his fault, is it? Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, he gets the benefits of the things that we do. We've just walked Hadrian's Wall together, go to museums together, and I do things with all three on my own. People go, wow, I can't even sight and take all three kids out on my own. And you're like, 3 kids on your own. Do you know what I mean? So it's got swings and roundabouts. And sort of what I said in my speech was, yet they sacrifice, but I'm their dad. Do you know what I mean? I mightn't see myself as a normal dad, but I'm their dad at the end of the day. That's what the speech was about, was it's not just my sacrifice. It's everyone that's around me. It's me mum watching me struggle doing simple things. It's me kids that I can't do the things that I would have done if I could see, if I was still a soldier. There's things that my partner has to now do, do you know what I mean, that we wouldn't do if I could see. So I know what I would have been like if I could have seen, do you know what I mean? So that does frustrate me a bit.
Do you ever think how different life might have been if you hadn't been on that roof in 2007?
I haven't got time to think about it. Do you know what I mean? I haven't got time to think about if I could see, or being born blind is worse. Do you know what I mean? I haven't got time. I get up in the morning and it's sort of like, right, I've got to get the kids ready to school, I've got to get to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to get to work, I've got to let the dogs out, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. So it's like, I've got time to think about it, do you know what I mean? So it's no is the answer, because I haven't got time to think about it. Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. New year, new voices. We wanted to start 2022 specifically with the views of young people on the kinds of issues which have always been the concern of In Touch, education, jobs, relationships. So we were delighted to discover that in Scotland, a youth forum has recently reformed after a lull because of COVID to do exactly that. It's called, intriguingly, Haggai. We'll find out why in a moment. But first, let's meet 3 of its members, Kerry, Rhys and Ailey. And in the best traditions of In Touch, let's get you all to introduce yourselves and just tell us a bit about yourselves. Kerry, if we could start with you.
I'm from East Kilbride. I'm 17 and my visual disability condition is albinism with nystagmus and photophobia.
My name's Rhys. And I'm from Aberdeenshire. I'm 23. My eye condition is called optic nerve hyperplasia. That means I'm completely blind, and I've been blind since birth.
I'm Ellie. I'm from Aberdeen. I'm 20 years old, and my visual impairment is retinitis pigmentosa and oculomotor apraxia.
And you're all members of the Scottish Youth Forum, or Haggai. So, Kerry, go on then, explain to me about that. Why the name? What does it mean?
I'm pretty sure it's about, because it's Haggis, because it's Scottish, we decided to, involve that in some way. But it's basically a community of sorts for young people within Scotland who have visual impairments. It's tailor focused to us campaigning for our rights and voices to be heard, whilst also having a really good social sector so other visual impairment people can talk to each other and communicate.
OK. So tell me, Ailey, for example, what are the kind of things that get Haggai going? I mean, Kerry there said it was a campaigning group. So what are the big issues as far as you're concerned?
The biggest campaign we work on is awareness. People are more understanding if they're aware of how to help a visually impaired person. But also we've done campaigns in the past involving buses. So we did a campaign with Stagecoach where we swapped places with them. So they were blindfolded and they had to get on the bus.
So what are the things people do wrong?
When you ask for, can you please tell me when it's my stop, the bus drivers forget. And I mean, that's very easily to forget, but it's something we really rely on.
And it's very frustrating, isn't it? Because you're sitting there, you're trying to count the stops, you're trying to remember the turnings, traffic lights feel like stops. It's all that kind of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So getting them to go on a bus wearing a blindfold really helped them and help us understand how they perceive it through sitting in the bus driver's seat. I have definitely seen an improvement.
I'm going to ask you all about education because you're all still in education in one form or another. Ailey, you're now at university studying physics, but I think you've had a number of access problems at school. Explain the sort of things you mean.
The problems kind of started when I moved to secondary school. First, my primary school asked my secondary school if I wanted my PSA with me so they could read and scribe for me, and my secondary school said no. I was a bit shocked that they said they didn't need that and they could cope with that on their own.
So that was early on. Have there been other things as your schooling's developed? Yeah.
So it's with technology, and I had a brilliant QTVI, which is qualified teacher for the visually impaired, until I was in S4, and she was great and continued to teach me maths braille because I do science. And then she retired when I was finishing my Nat 5s, and then the people who took over from her, first of all, there was 3 of them and they didn't communicate with each other. So if I told one of them my iPad was broken, the next day I would have someone new and they wouldn't know my iPad was broken, and that was really something that was frustrating.
So it was all a bit of a struggle, really.
Yeah.
Kerry, you're in your last year at school. How have things been going for you?
Me and Ailey are kind of on completely opposite sides of the spectrum in that way, because I got the opportunity to choose which high school I went to. I was able to tour it where there was a specific visual impairment base, and I decided to go there, and I 100%, I'm so glad I made that decision. So my high school experience is really good, I'd say, when it comes to visual impairment, because the school itself is really supportive, the general population. I went into first year and it was all this new equipment. There was someone for every subject in it. There's within the unit teachers who have a degree in a specific subject. So then when you're in classes, if you need support, then they can help you with that. And you're given a key adult with one specific staff member to kind of coach you along and check up on you and give you targets.
Just to make it clear, you're in a special unit of a mainstream school. Is that right?
Yeah, so technically, I'm just a pupil. I don't want to say regular pupil, but I'm part of the mainstream school, but I'm also a part of the unit. So then if I have a problem or if there's accessibility where a teacher's trying to get materials, they will send it to the unit, and then a staff member from there will adapt it for me. But then over the years, you obviously naturally get more independent as you become a teenager and grow up in the school. So in first year, I had a support assistant with me in every classroom, and now I don't have one at all, and I'm completely electronic working-wise. I don't have a single jotter. There's no point. I bring a pen, but I don't use it. I do everything electronically, and I'm now at the stage where we can kind of skip that phase of liaising with the unit every time.
That's really interesting, because you're in a unit, as you say, where you're almost implying you perhaps get the best of both worlds. And I want to bring Rhys in on this, because I think you've been both at a special school originally and in mainstream education. How would you compare those experiences?
I would say the specialist school was probably the best. I went to mainstream primary and that was okay. I'd say like most people in primary, you kind of have someone to help you more often. Because I went to mainstream secondary for a few months, but that didn't really work out. They weren't really understanding what I needed. I think there was too many teachers and a lot more pupils in the class. It was kind of harder for them to accommodate. And then when I went to the blind school, it was completely top of the range, you know, because they knew what they were doing all the time.
So at the end of your education, your secondary education, where were you then?
I'm at college just now. So yeah, it's a mainstream college.
Can I check all your attitudes, really? What do you think is the ideal? Because this is a debate that goes on and on, this business about whether it's better to go to a special school, a mainstream school with a unit, or just be part of the mainstream. I'm going to ask you all what you think is the preferred option, if you're able to say. Kerry, if I can start with you.
I would definitely say, like the way you described it, my situation of the best of both worlds, because even though like I am a really independent learner, especially in school, so it's one of those things that I'm not really asking for help and not really needing the support now. If I was at a mainstream school, I would 100% feel like struggle and frustrated. I wouldn't feel supported. I'd feel supported as a teenager in high school, but not as a visually impaired teenager in high school.
Ailey, what about you?
Yeah, I think I would agree. At my high school, we had ASN wing for additional sport needs. They were going to put me in there, but we took the decision not to because I didn't think that I was like needing that much support. But at the same time, I wasn't comfortable in mainstream. So I didn't fit into either of those boxes. So I definitely think a bit of both would have been great.
And Reese, I think if I read you right, you're saying actually you think a special school has worked best for you.
Yeah, I think so. Because it's not that I can't manage in mainstream work-wise. It's more the attitude, I think. I kind of feel now in the college that sometimes the support team almost like they decide when you can be independent and when you can't.
I'm just wondering where all this is leading you in terms of jobs. Can we establish what you're all hoping to do? Ailey, let me start with you.
I don't know for certain what I want to do. I'm doing physics at uni at the moment and I'm really into space science. And like my dream job would be working at NASA.
And how difficult is it to do a subject like physics with a visual impairment?
It's a nightmare. You have all these equations that the software I have doesn't read out the equations in the right order to make them make sense. There's nothing wrong with me understanding it's the accessibility aspect of it.
So is there usually a software solution if you can find the right person?
Yeah, usually. Maybe it's a combination of two things. For example, right now I'm using a technology called Fusion, and it's a combination of two old things put together to make a new thing. So it magnifies the screen to as big as you want it or as small as you want it. But also Fusion has something called JAWS installed with it as well. So JAWS is a screen reader. So every time you put your mouse over something, JAWS will read it out to you. Technology is great when it works.
I mean, presumably there are lots of things that you could do which would be a lot easier than what you've decided to do. I take it you've decided to do this because it's what you really care about.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I love physics, yeah.
Is it doable, do you think? Do you think you could get a job in a field as competitive as space research and space exploration?
Well, I know it can be done because there are other blind people who work at NASA, which is really cool. And they have like changed the way you analyze data. Usually you get a big screen of numbers, but now they've turned it into sound. So depending on what numbers they are, the sound waves will change, which I think is pretty cool.
And I know you're right because we've interviewed somebody who worked at NASA So they do exist and it can be done. Reese, what do you want to do?
I don't know yet either. I'm doing social science just now because it has that broad range of subject areas. It gives you a chance to try out different aspects.
Well, Ailey's told us her dream job. Go out on a limb, you never know. I mean, Ailey, there could be somebody from NASA listening who's about to offer you a job. Reese, you must have something in your mind.
I'd quite like to do some kind of job that would help other people. From being at the blind school, you know, there's a lot of people that have more complex needs as well as a visual impairment. I kind of got quite used to that, and I think maybe from that experience, I'd like to kind of work in an area where I was helping those kinds of people.
Kerry, either the dream job or the job that you think is most likely the one that you're going to get?
I've just applied for university, so it's a
That's
really
true, you're the
scary
youngest, yeah.
But my number one uni course that I'd want to get into is public sociology, and that's kind of fits into me wanting to and becoming a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament. I don't think I want to go in the directly Parliament route, but I do want to have like a physical, like concrete impact on society and like the way movements and all that kind of stuff and trying to make change.
I'm just wondering what you feel about the amount of help you get. And I'm trying to relate the fact that you've got this forum and you can make these points, but what you think could be done more in terms of helping people who are visually impaired into jobs, the sort of jobs you've been talking about. Let me just throw that at Ailey. Is that what the forum should be doing, you know, pushing for people to get those kind of job opportunities?
I definitely think so. Right now, the statistics for visually impaired people in work are 1 in 5, which is really quite bad when you think about that. So in Haggai, we're helping each other to like write our CVs and get a job and go for it, but also trying to raise that number, even if we get it to 1 in 4. I think that would be a massive achievement.
Right, we've been very serious up to now. Perhaps we should talk about a few more potentially light-hearted things, although they've got difficulties as well. Can I be cheeky? Any girlfriends, boyfriends on the scene for any of the three of you? The most confident can jump in.
No boyfriends to speak of. I'm concentrating on uni then. Once I get into uni, I can be like, you know what, if I get an unconditional, I'll be like, okay, let's chill out here.
That's very responsible of you.
I'm kind of got the same idea. Someone will come up when the time comes.
Ailey?
Not at the moment, no.
I just wonder how difficult or easy it is to make those kind of contacts with a visual impairment.
I think now, because we're at the day and age with social media, it's kind of one of the things that like you can talk to anyone if you want to. I do think, obviously, visual impairments can hold you back in the way of just meeting up. For me, that's mainly just down to transport. But I think meeting people is like, because it's social media and it's always friends, and you get to find out who everyone is, sort of thing.
So does that actually make it easier, maybe, than it has been in the past, if that's the way most contacts are made?
I'd say so. I mean, I know that's the way me and my friends mostly talk. Like, we talk over social media more than texting.
And Ailey?
I think reading facial expressions is hard as a visually impaired person. So that aspect of the whole dating thing is harder for us.
Right. I just want to ask you a bit, certainly Ailey and Kerry, you're both members of the Scottish Youth Parliament, I think, through Haggai. And Ailey, you've actually, I think, put a motion through about guide dogs. Can you just explain about that?
So since we left the European Union, guide dogs have been taking off a scheme called the Pet Passport Scheme, which allowed guide dogs to move from country to country within the EU. So the motion is about getting the UK government and the EU to make a kind of compromise and make kind of similar scheme.
Right. And do you know how it's going? How far it's got?
Well, I actually had a breakthrough at the start of December. I've been doing a lot of work with my MSP from another constituency, and they talked to MPs in Westminster, and there was actually a debate on it at the start of December, and they have agreed to do the best they can.
So you're already experiencing the frustrations of how long things take to get done.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And Kerry, what about you? You also are a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament. Have you put any propositions in, or are there any things that you passionately are wanting to achieve through it?
Yeah, well, this is Ailey's second term and this is my first time being elected. So I went through the kind of campaign process this year through the summer. I'm technically in the introduction phase for becoming a member and knowing what to do as a Scottish Youth Parliament. But then for Haggai, I have been doing a few things here and there. I've been giving comments on a manifesto about the education for disabilities for young people in Scotland, and that was at a UN conference, and that's actually caused a motion to be launched surrounding what I've said. I'm putting opportunities in situations where I'm like, okay, this is my chance to kind of make a change and make sure things are going to get better.
That seems a very optimistic note on which to end.
Might change soon, but...
Thank you so much, Kerry Burke, Reith Watt, Ailey Morrison. Thank you very much for joining in, and the very best of luck for your futures, all of you. And that's it for today. Your comments and views, please, on anything you've heard in the programme, and indeed anything you'd like us to cover in the year to come. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave your voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and studio managers Jonathan Esp and Mike Smith, goodbye.